maybe some tips to what could make us, if not totally successful in this year, at least in the direction of success, of fruitfulness, and of a result-oriented life, certainly in a Godward direction. When we ended the year 2011, some 3 weeks ago, as is expected, we took stock of our lives. And I remember one of the things I said was, if God were going to write a letter to the nation, as we see in the Bible, the last book of the Bible, Revelations chapter 2 and chapter 3, there are letters written to 7 church ages describing the lives of the people at that time, and in some way in a prophetic nature to us as to what our lives would be like. And in each of the 7 letters, there were points of commendation and there were points of rebuke or condemnation. And we ended that year saying that it is good for us to take stock of our lives and then to start our new life in 2012. And by God's goodness and his mercy, and obviously by his grace, we have now seen the year 2012. It's just a few weeks old, but what are some of the things that might be important for us to look at? From my perspective tonight, and maybe next week, I want to look at 8 pointers that I will flesh out from 3 main points, which I will borrow from what we started discussing this year. If you remember, we looked at 2 main scriptures in the Bible. The first one was the very first book of the Bible, Genesis, where it says that God used to fellowship, for lack of a better phrase, God used to walk around this garden, that the paradise that he created man in. The garden is known as Eden, E-D-E-N, meaning delightful, blissful, meaning the presence of God. And God used to have communion, to fellowship with his creature, with man, in the garden. And one day God called for them because they were not where he expected them to be. So God said, Adam, where are you? This is in Genesis chapter 3. And Adam's response was this: we heard your voice in the garden, we hid ourselves because we were naked, because we were afraid. And I said 2 weeks ago and last week that those 3 points are points of reality about humanity without God in our lives. We are fearful, we are naked, no matter how much we try to cover ourselves with education, exposure, finance, wealth, degrees. We are naked, we are exposed, and of course we are hiding. We are in hiding, we are fearful, and we are naked. And God in his mercy took off the leaves, the fig leaves which man put to cover himself, and gave him leather, and changed the leaves for the leather. But when God said to Adam, where are you? And Adam gave that answer in the Bible, in the garden, God's response was, who told you? And that's what we've been discussing for the last 2 weeks since we started this year. Who has your ear? Who speaks to you? Who it is that can talk into your life, that can shift the course of your direction, especially if it's not in a positive direction. And as I said last week, let me quickly also say that I believe in mentorship. I believe in apprenticeship. I have a mentor. I have a great person, a pastor. Actually, I have more than one, but I have a main mentor who I love so much. He speaks into my life, gives me direction, gives me rebuke, gives me counsel, because every one of us needs that kind of a person and that kind of a mentor-mentee relationship in your life. But what we're talking about is when somebody comes your way, sometimes familiar, sometimes out from the blues, and says something, puts a document in your hand, gives you an offer, sends you an email, gives you an address, a phone card, gives you a complimentary card, or says something, and as they say in English, something that looks too good to be true, and you jump into it undiscerningly, you jump into it throwing all caution to the wind, you jump into it not taking an informed opinion about the decision you're about to make, and then there's a cascade amplification of effects. which obviously is always bigger than the precursor. The ripple effect, as you can tell, when you drop a little pebble, a stone, in a bowl of water or in a river, it's a tiny thing, but it has concentric circles, and they just expand, and you can never tell how far it would go. So God asked them, who told you you were naked? As a matter of fact, we all know from the scriptures that God created them like that, but it never was a problem. They never even knew it was a problem, because in the mind of God, God had covered them with his glory. His presence was there. They were not animals that needed a fur coat over them. Man was created for God's own purpose, the way God wanted him, and only God knows what else he was going to do. But somebody came, in this instant, the serpent, the devil. And more often than not, whether it's the serpent, the devil, it's that voice that changes you. That voice that reprograms the coordinates of your life. That voice that takes you off target. And it happens a lot of times. It happens most especially with young people. You're planning to do this and somebody says that it's a friend or friends. It's peer pressure. So you find that you abandon your course, your charted course, and you move on. I have said this and I want to say it again. Most times in schools, especially when you're in a stage when you're about taking major exams, let's say like your Form 5, O-levels, WASI, IGCSE, or your A-levels or your degree, if it's a program that you have been following, let's say for 5 years, from 1 to Form 5 or grade 7, I think, to 11 or thereabout, sometimes you can see that you were doing well. And then when your grades start dropping, the teachers keep writing reports, but within yourself, you can tell exactly when things shifted. You were always studying, you were always doing something until somebody made fun of you, and they gave you a book to read, and they gave you a movie to watch, and they told you subscribe to this, and it overtook your emotions, overtook your life, your attention, your passion, everything. Because ladies and gentlemen, everything that demands for your attention has the very ability of controlling your life. Anything and everything that provides your need has every power within it to control your life. Whatever it is, it sucks you into addiction of sorts, and by the time you realize yourself, like in the Bible, we have a boy called the prodigal son, sometimes it comes too late. Again, if I take you to that story, I remember that was the second scripture. The first was Adam and God. The second was this scripture in the third gospel of the New Testament of the Bible, the Gospel of Luke. As you know, there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Injil. The third one, Luke, in chapter 15, from verse 10, it says, Jesus Christ told them this story. A man had two sons, and the younger son, and history says he was about 15, 16, walked up to his daddy and said, Father, give me the portion of your goods that is mine. Share the property as if you are dead. I'm going off with mine. Obviously at 15 is the wrong age. You don't know all the variables in life to make an investment that would yield returns so that that inheritance or heirloom becomes a blessing to you and your generations. You squander it, which is what he did. But much as we talk about him, the question comes again, who spoke to him? Who had his ear? Who talked to him? Who said what? Who told him, well, you know, your father is rich, he has 5 cars, you know, you could be this, you could be going to US, to China or whatever, and he bought that bait. And ladies and gentlemen, as in the serpent, and as in anybody who could have been the one who spoke to the prodigal son, as in all the people who come our way, have you noticed that most times they tell you things, but they never do it themselves? They tell you, oh, if you do that, it's okay, everybody does it. They never told you, I did it, or I'm doing it. And they tend to have an understanding of your life when they really have nothing about your purpose in their understanding. So in 2012, I would say watch who speaks into your life, watch your associations, watch who influences you. The truth about influence is that, as we say, the devil doesn't have a horn. You know, evil does not always come like that. I am E-V-I-L, I'm evil. Most times, as we all can tell, evil, temptations, traps are all